Welcome. I'm Pamela Rickia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Eva Witsel. Hi, Eva.
Hi, Pam. Hello.
So nice to meet you. And we were recently introduced through a guest on the podcast, and I am really looking forward to hearing more about your unschooling experience. So to get us started, can you share with us a bit about you and your family and what everybody's interested in right now?
Okay, yeah, thank you. My name is Eva. I'm from the Netherlands. So English is not my first language, so I'll try my best, but it's good to know. We live in near the city center of The Hague. So it's a big city in the Netherlands. We live there with my husband and two children. My husband's name is Arnoud, and my children are Berend, and he's 15 years old. And my daughter, who is Fine, and she's 13 years old. She'll be 14 in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yay. So what's everybody interested in right now?
Yeah, well, we started unschooling when my son was 4. So that was a long time ago. But when he was like 13, he decided he wanted to study aerospace engineering. So, and in the Netherlands, the educational system is a bit different from the United States and Canada and lots of other countries. And it's really difficult study to get into without a high school diploma. So he needs to get a diploma, and that's also different than in a lot of other countries. You have to take exams for all the subjects. And so that's what he is preparing for now. We started that when he was 13, and last year, so last school year that is, he did his first exam in biology and he passed it. So that was really great.
Yeah.
He didn't do any school until he was 13. And then in 2 years, he did just like the whole biology, and then he passed his exam. So that was wonderful. And then this year he will be doing English and history. And well, in the next couple of years, we'll do the different subjects, and then he'll be able to go to university. So he's doing a lot of that and working on that. And he's got a couple of hobbies too. So he plays field hockey, he plays tennis, he does a lot of music production and playing piano. So those are things he really likes. He watches a lot of YouTube videos and is really into playing computer games. He's always been like that, I think, since he could operate an iPhone or an iPad or a computer, he was playing games. So those are the things my son is up to at the moment. My daughter is still 13, and she doesn't have plans, really specific plans like that yet. She does say that eventually she might want to go to university, but hasn't any particular interest yet that she wants to study or something like that. And she has the goal to get a high school diploma. So she's still doing what we were doing before, doing the things she likes. So it's a lot of scrolling through Pinterest, and she's always finding fun stuff to do on Pinterest. She likes arts and crafts and things like that. So she's into making the little friendship bracelets with the little knots in it. Yeah, she's doing lots of those. She started embroidery recently. She likes to crochet, those kind of things. And she's we are reading a book list about the history of science. Both my children are really into science and math. I don't think it's that's because my husband and I really like it too. So we're always really enthusiastic about it. So I think it was a little bit contagious. So and she does a lot of math too and history of science. We're reading the book list and talking to friends with WhatsApp, things like that. Yeah, my husband, he works full time and he plays field hockey too and tennis. Plays the guitar, does a little bit of math with my daughter sometimes. That's about it. It's just a lot of work. He works 5 days a week, so he spends a lot of time working. And I'm at home with the children every day. So I do lots of stuff with them. And up until earlier this year, I was really active for the Dutch Homeschooling Association. Did most of the work lobbying with our government to make sure they didn't make homeschooling impossible in the Netherlands. That was one of their goals a couple of years ago. So that was a lot of work. And but I stopped those activities earlier this year because I wanted to work on. I'm writing my own math curriculum for homeschool children in the Netherlands. So that's what I'm working on a lot. That takes up a lot of my time at the moment. And I organize lots of things for homeschooling children. That takes a lot of time as well.
Yeah. Wow. I love hearing how you can see how the different interests of the people in the family weave together the things that, like you said, when we're just excited about something, that is often contagious because we see the fun side of it, right?
Yeah.
And that with what the other thing that stood out was that a love for science. What you're looking at is the history of science. So, it's not, you like science, we need to focus on science experiments and learning facts and, that kind of stuff. But the full breadth of it, like we always talk about, whatever your interest is, you can hit so much of it, like the history definitely. Of science, right?
Yeah. We did lots of experiments too, especially from a really young age. And I think that's the way I had them, made them a little bit enthusiastic about science. Because a lot of people are already, when they're just small kids, they like have the curriculum and the textbooks, and it's a bit dry, and the theory about how everything works without the wonder of science, the experiments, like the things that every homeschooler usually does with the baking soda and the vinegar. My children loved it. So we did that like a million times, and I had food coloring and I added lots of things, and they had so much fun with doing experiments like that. So they thought science was one of the funnest things to do.
Well, exactly, because it's just about how our world works, right? It's just exploring that. So it is so much fun to play with all that kind of stuff, and how it can really, like, even if that was their only interest, you could open up the whole world. Like they could explore the whole world just through that lens. So it's really fun to see that. So you mentioned you guys started unschooling when your eldest was 4. So I'd be curious to hear how you discovered unschooling, how you came across it, and what your move to unschooling looked like.
And he went to school when he was 4. So, but if we go back a little bit before that, when he was just a baby, I found I needed advice on breastfeeding and baby stuff and things like that. So I ended up on a breastfeeding forum on the internet. And there was one family, the mother was there as well. And she told us that she was planning to homeschool her children. And her oldest was just a little bit, I think about 2 years older than mine. And so it was a little bit before my son was supposed to start school. And I was like, that's actually a great idea. And most people I know and most people I speak to, when they first hear about homeschooling, they were like, what's that? Why would you do that? Is that even allowed? Yeah. So that's, so that was a really different reaction for me. And I think that came because my husband and I obviously just went to school when we were young, and we didn't really like it. It was not an awful experience, but it was a bit boring for us. Yeah. So, and what I also noticed is then in the Netherlands, you have like in elementary school, and then at 12 you start high school, so you don't have middle school or anything. So the elementary school, when we finished that and I went to high school, the teachers were all like, what do they teach you at elementary school? You don't know anything. And then I finished high school and I got my diploma. I was really happy with my diploma and I went to university. And the teachers there said the same thing. They were like, they don't teach you anything anymore. You don't know anything. And I was like, okay, well. And then I graduated from university. I was really proud of myself. Had my first job, had my first manager tell me, people who just come out of university, I have to teach them everything. They don't know anything. And like in hindsight, I think he was a bit right. So I didn't know. I knew a lot of things, of course, after studying for like 21 years, but not very practical things that I needed in the job that I was doing. So to me, the educational system wasn't that good, I think. It wasn't really something I found very important. But my husband and I at the time both worked 4 days a week, and my children went to daycare, and they had a great time at daycare, so I didn't have a problem with that. And I saw school a bit like daycare. It was like, oh, he spent 24 hours in daycare a week before that, and now we will go to school for 25 hours. It's not a big of a difference. So I was like, the school was not really important to me educationally, but it was more like a daycare, something like that. And then he went to school and he didn't like it, and school didn't like it. They were, after just a couple of weeks, they were on the phone and telling us, this isn't good and this isn't good. And I went, okay, then no school, then we don't do it. So because it wasn't that important to us educationally, and I'd heard about homeschooling before, I thought, well, if it's not working and it's just like daycare, and if it's not a good daycare, then you don't bring your children there. So we just quit, and then we started homeschooling. And I'm really a person who likes to research things before I do something. So I read a lot of books and websites, blogs too. There was not a lot of information in Dutch at that time. Still isn't a lot at the moment. So mostly American blogs, and you had Yahoo email lists. At that time, you didn't have Facebook yet. Well, at least I didn't have a Facebook account. I don't think it existed yet. So I did. I read a lot on Yahoo email lists like that, and I discovered unschooling, and it just made a lot of sense. I'm really analytical, rational thinker. So I wasn't attracted to it by a lot of people are about the freedom and things like that. It was just, it made the most sense on the level of how brains work, how children learn, and the most effective ways for children to learn things are when they are interested in something, and not when someone else sets up a planning and says, do this day and do this that day, and cuts it all up in little pieces. And so that's not how learning works. And unschooling was the homeschooling philosophy that fit the science about learning best, I thought, at least. So that's what we did. And it fits my son best, because my son wasn't that easy going when he was little. So it was, for him, it was best too. So I think that combination led us to unschooling.
Wow, I love that story.
Yeah.
I love the focus on learning and how that learning works and setting up the environment. Because it is, when you see, there are an inordinate amount of teachers who come to unschooling too, because when you do look at it, it is so much about building this kind of environment, right? Where they can follow what's interesting to them in the moment and sink into it for as long as they want. They can, dive as deep as they want and then move on, versus, like you were saying, like the chop, you do this today, or you do this morning, you did this afternoon.
It didn't work at all for him. Not one bit.
Exactly.
No, they tried it in school and they were like, he doesn't listen. And I was like, yeah.
Yep. That was the same with my oldest. The other piece that I loved was your story about going through each education level for yourself, and each one saying, oh, they're not teaching you anything now. I am going to have to. That was my experience so much. And that was a piece that was super valuable for me when I was deciding, homeschooling and then unschooling very quickly after that. Because it was so much about, well, I learned all these things, and you got that reaction from, well, it wasn't what I supposedly needed for the next level of the track that they
were not at all. Yeah.
follow,
Yeah, that
right?
was, for example, when we went to university, then the first report I had to write, I'd never done anything like that before. So I had no idea how to do that. Well, that's bad. I was like, I've went to school for so many years. Why didn't they teach me this in school? And I had to learn it all by myself. And that's something that I also realized that a lot of the things that I knew didn't come from school or university, that I learned them in other ways. So if you realize that, then you're a lot of steps along the way to unschooling.
Exactly, exactly. It's the practical knowledge. And, as you're thinking about the different styles of learning, it's the hands-on piece. Like, it's following what you're interested in and actually being able to do it that gets you the skills that are going to be most useful. Like, you're not going to completely switch gears very often, as even from childhood into adulthood. Like, I'm sure you saw for your son
Yeah.
that those aerospace interests.
And it didn't drop out of nowhere. Yeah, it was. I can see where that came from, but that was a really interesting thing for me when I started unschooling. I'm like a planner, and I like to organize things, and I have lots of to-do lists and all those kind of things. I like that, but for planning someone else's education, that's not really possible. And I don't know where I read something about it, but I read somewhere about this idea that you can't control what your child is going to learn, and what outcome it will have, the unschooling. And I remember thinking, I thought it had an outcome, because you get a diploma and you know that you have had this education and you learned all these things. And then I thought, this is what the outcome will be. But then I started thinking about it. You don't have a guaranteed outcome, because you might forget things, but still pass the exam. You don't necessarily will go to, we have 3 different levels of high school in the Netherlands. I don't know which one he will go to. I think he will go there, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he even wants to. So there are so many things that you don't know before you start with, you don't really start, but before you can't predict it. And that was a kind of difficult switch for me to make. That this is not something I can plan. This is not something I'm going to decide. He has to decide for himself. And later my daughter had to decide for herself. And they both are on their separate ways. They're really not alike. So they have their different interests. And it's really great to see that developing. For example, my son, he started playing Minecraft at one point, played Minecraft for hours and days and weeks and months and years. And then that developed into other computer games, like the more strategic war games like Civilization and Total War and Battlefield 1. And I don't know, lots of different ones. And I was always reading, because I'm really a researcher. So every age has its new challenges. So I always kept reading and learning about what is important for the children that are a bit older than mine are. So I could just have a little bit of a glimpse in the future. So I had read about other people who were saying, if your child likes these kind of games, he might like Kerbal Space Program. So I went to my son and said, would you like me to buy Kerbal Space Program for you? And he'd heard about it and he said, yeah, I'll try it. And so I bought Kerbal Space Program, and I think he spent like a year playing Kerbal Space Program. And that's where it started, that he really liked aerospace engineering. And then him and I did a MOOC, like the online university courses. Yeah. So there's a MOOC on the Introduction to Aerospace Engineering. So we did that together. He knew so much about aerospace engineering, and he was like 13, so he didn't had enough knowledge about the math to do all the problems. And I didn't have the aerospace engineering knowledge. So we did it together. I brought in my math skills and he his aerospace engineering skills. And together we were like really good. Solve anything. Yeah. Yeah, that was fun.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you know what? That leads so nicely into our next question, because as you mentioned, your kids are now in their teens, right?
Yeah.
And I was curious about how your unschooling days look different now that they're older. And I just love that story of you guys diving in together. I think and that's a more experienced unschooling thing to do. I think when people first come to unschooling, there is, I wonder if there's a fear of curriculum. Like unschoolers don't do anything that looks like school at all. Like, because it's
but
bad.
I think that's a good thing. When you start, you shouldn't, because otherwise people, when they start unschooling and they immediately take up textbooks and curriculum, they go off that way and they never go back.
That's exactly what I was getting at, because at first, you think that's the only way to learn, right? So when you're first coming, it is really valuable to not go that route, especially as your first choice, right? To discover all the different ways you can learn things, all the different ways you can dive into things. And then later, it just becomes another option on the big smorgasbord of learning possibilities when you're interested in something, right? Yep. So that you guys could just go in to that aerospace engineering course and play with it. And you guys could play with it together. And it wasn't about grades, and it wasn't about, we have to do this well. We have to not help each other. It's a completely different way of learning.
I think a lot of parents would have done it differently. They would have just given it to him and say, well, do it yourself because you want to learn it, then just do it. And if you help them, it's considered cheating.
Yes.
And he would never have been able to do this if I hadn't helped him, because he just didn't have all the math knowledge that were necessary to be able to do it. But I wouldn't have been able to do it because I didn't know as much about aerospace engineering. And also what we did was the first part that was about orbital mechanics, so lots of physics and math in it. And then the last bit was about systems engineering and about safety issues and regulations and things like that. Didn't interest him. So we quit after the bit about physics and math. And I was like, well, if it's not interesting, then we don't do it. And a lot of people would like, wow, it would be nice to finish it. And I was like, well, no, why would we do that? If he wants to study aerospace engineering, he'll at one point have to do things like that. But that's like 10 years from now or something.
Exactly. That's just a little seed planted that this is that's a component of it. So are there some other ways that your unschooling days are looking different now that your kids are older?
Yeah, I think so different, because the thing about that he wants to get his diploma, it's not an easy path. So it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work for me as well, because he's 15 now, but he started when he was 13. And also at this moment still, he's not really able to plan it himself. So he's like, I want to have this long-term goal, but in the short term, I have to make this decision to do the work now. And that's not working in his brains yet. He really definitely wants the long-term goal, but then making it possible by doing the work now, I have to be his planning. And that's a difficult, still a difficult decision, like every day. No, not every day. I don't think about it every day. But I'm a real unschooler at heart, so I don't want to force him to do it. So I don't want to go on like, well, we have to do it now, because if we don't, we're blah, blah, blah. So I don't want to be like that. But on the other hand, he has made it so clear, and we've been working at it for 2 years now, that he really wants to get his diploma. So me saying, I'm not going to help you, I can help you, but I won't because I don't like it, that's not good either. So I think that's difficult. That's been a difficult journey for us to do. So I try to do it like as much in an unschooling way. So creating an environment in which he just has to learn the things. He can't but learn it. So for example, for biology, we had the textbook, but I also had a lot of just normal books to read, like fiction. We read lots of non-fiction books as well, but just better than textbooks, because textbooks usually are a bit boring. So we read a lot of books like that. We watched documentaries. He really likes watching videos about all kinds of things. So I looked up a lot of videos on every subject we had to learn about. And I had a biology club I organized, a monthly, so other homeschoolers could join us. And we set lots of different activities every month on the different subjects we were working on at that moment. So we, in that way, I tried to do lots of biology-related things that he would absorb the biology that he needed to pass his exam. And you can't learn everything you need for your exam like that, but you can learn a lot like that. And so. And that's the way he learns best. So that's how we try to set it up. But yeah, when they were younger, it was more like we did whatever we felt like doing, and that's not the case anymore. So I think that's like a short summary of what I was saying. Yeah. And for my daughter, it feels a bit more, it feels the same, like we've always done. So we do the things we like to do. And if I've planned something to do for her and she doesn't want to, we do something else. So, and that's just what we've always done. So that's more similar. But what I really like is that when they're older and the things they're learning now are a bit more interesting than they were younger. So that's something that I really like with teenagers, that there's really interesting things to learn about. And I'm learning a lot as well. So that's what I really like. Yeah.
That's so fun. That's so fun. And it's true, like the things that they're interested in. And often they're new things for us, right? So we are. It's not that we're like remembering stuff that we never learned, but we're exploring totally new things. It's so fascinating. And thanks very much for sharing your story, how your son's journey with learning, because that it's a beautiful unschooling example of helping our kids and supporting them as they're trying to reach goals, or just do things that they want, but that, like, I love that it's not, okay, you want this diploma, here's the school path, and you just got to follow it, and I'll just keep on top of you. No, not at all. It's like, I know my child. I know the way he likes to bring information in. I know the way he likes to learn. And you're supporting that so beautifully by finding interesting ways for him to bring the information in that helps him take the next step on the path that he is really interested in following, right?
Yeah.
And maybe a year down the road, you'll get to a point where he's like, you know what, maybe this isn't worth the path that I want. Maybe
we have those kind of conversations sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, do you still really want this? Because it's so much work and you're not always happy about it. Do you still, he's really, he has no doubt. No,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just a lovely story about, and you can see all in the background. Like, I mean, you don't have time to explain, in our conversation, all the different pieces, but I can just imagine, those conversations about, timing and just motivation and like all that stuff, even going through the stress of writing an exam about it, all of that is just fodder for your conversation, right? And it's very much just a dance through, like you said, it just comes up, multiple times a week, I imagine, that, it's another day, because each day is a fresh day for making those choices, right?
Yeah.
And that you've taken the time to find all sorts of different ways for him to engage with the stuff that he's interested in. Like that's the beautiful unschooling piece. So thanks very much for sharing that. You mentioned that you and your husband are involved in technology stuff, and your love for math and science and stuff like that. So I would love to hear how the different aspects of technology weave their way through your lives. Now, you mentioned your son and his computer games, and Michael loved Kerbal Space Program and Outer Wilds. I don't know if your son has discovered Outer Wilds.
No, I haven't heard about it.
Yes. But anyway, yeah, I'd love to hear more about tech in your lives.
Yeah, I think there's two things to that. I think the one thing was when they were younger, I noticed a lot of people having really big difficulties with anything technology related. So playing apps on the iPhone, watching television, playing computer games. And we really like those things. So I had no trouble introducing them to my children. And I had no trouble at all letting them play however and whatever and how long they wanted, because I thought it was a good thing to do. And that's kind of related to the parenting part about unschooling, that those kind of things can be really hard. This was not an area I was struggling with. I was more with the parenting, like the relationship, because he's just not a really easy child to raise. So the other one is a lot easier. So that was a struggle for me, because he's very similar to me as well. So the things that I can't really handle, he doesn't do well with. And so we kind of push each other's buttons often. So that's been the difficult part of parenting for me. But things like eating whatever they like, or whenever they like, and sleeping when they're tired, those were the easy parts. And technology has been a part of that as well. So we always supported them playing. We kind of motivated them. And the Minecraft, for example, he didn't know about Minecraft. He was like 7 or 8 when I introduced it to him, and I showed him on the iPad, would you like to play the game? He didn't like it. So I was like, well, okay, put it away again, try something else. And then I think about 6 months later, I showed it him again, and I don't know why it came up, but we had a look at it again. He was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And we gave him the subscription to the thing, and then he started playing and playing and playing. I was always sitting next to him, because at the moment, I'm not sure if they had a Dutch version, but if they had, I didn't know about it. So he had an English version. That's how he learned English, and that's how he learned to read, how he learned to write. And there's so many things that he learned from playing Minecraft, but he didn't just magically learn them. He was playing Minecraft, and I was sitting next to him, and he was like, what does this say? How do you write lobby? How do you write spawn? And how do you do this? And then, that was something that I thought was really good to invest in, because it was something he was really interested in. He had so much fun with it. And I could see him learning all day, every day. And I was really happy with it. So I think that was also because of our backgrounds, but also because I was looking at him and seeing him do things, and really not just like, oh, he's playing Minecraft, he's in front of the screen all day. And if you don't look at what they're really doing, then you don't see the learning in it. But I did see the learning in it really so much. So that was a good thing. The other thing about the technology part is that here in the Netherlands, there's so little homeschoolers. There are literally at the moment a little over 1,000 children in the Netherlands that are homeschooled. So I think, and they're spread out all over the country. It's not a big country, it's just a small country, but they're spread out all over the country. And especially because they have this rule that you're not allowed to start homeschooling after your child has already been to school. So don't ask me how we did that, but we did. But there are some younger children homeschooling, but there are so little children in their age group. When we started homeschooling, there were about 250 homeschooled children in all of the Netherlands at the time. So that's not a lot. So if you want to do things with other homeschoolers, which we did, because they both really like doing things with other children, then you have to organize things that people are interested enough to drive all the way to your house to do that every month. So, and I found that history and science, and I started with a science club when they were 11 and 9, and I did that for 3 years every month. And that was something that other families really liked, that their children were able to do at my house. So they were like playing with all the vinegar and baking soda and all kinds of stuff and making a big mess, and it wasn't at their own house. Yeah. So we did that at our house, and then I always did it like that. We had some time for the science club activities, and that they all also had time to just play with each other. So it wasn't just for doing the experiments and learning things, but it was also an opportunity for all the families that came together, to the mothers to talk together and all the children to play together. And so that was really a nice setup that I changed to a history club last year. It was really nice as well, but then the pandemic, and now difficult to organize things now. But I still do some things that you can mostly do outside. So I still try to do things like that. But it helped that I had this science and math background, because a lot of homeschoolers are a little bit intimidated by subjects like that. And so they really like sending their children to me and letting me do my thing with them.
Yeah. Well, that is helpful in that, because you're bringing that fun energy to it, right?
Yeah.
That curious, that enthusiasm that you were talking about earlier, like, I love this stuff. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
And you can all go play, it's without the expectation, right? That they go step by step by step, so that is so much nicer than, a parent who is still fearful of it and intimidated by the topic. So, I mean, there's a lot of homeschooling, unschooling parents who work on their math phobia that they developed in school, right? That fear.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is an important part as well, to try not to pass that on to their kids. So it's lovely that you offered that opportunity for all the kids to come together, and that it comes from technology, right? I mean, me as well, I didn't know any unschoolers, let alone even homeschoolers, when we first decided to take the plunge. And it was I only discovered it through searches on the internet, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing, the school wasn't working for my oldest. I was searching, and then one day I came across the word homeschooling. I'm like, what on earth is that? Yeah. And so technology is such a wonderful tool, right? That helps us as parents in what we're doing, but also just with engaging with our kids and them. It's that vilified, what you mentioned, I'm going to get this out properly, about watching what they're doing, knowing what they're doing, engaging with them in what they're doing is such a key aspect of the technology fears, right? Because if you're just sitting back, yes, you just see a screen, right? And everything just gets lumped into that screen. Yet when you are with them, having conversations or watching or doing it with them, you see all the learning that's going on constantly, right? Even just playing any kind of game, you can see the critical thinking skills that are in there, all those pieces, the numbers, the data management, like all that stuff that they're doing.
And the history and geography he learned from playing all those war games. I thought he would never learn geography because he wasn't interested at all. And then he started playing games like that, and now he knows more about it than I do. He can look at a map and say, well, this is now called this, but it used to be called this country, and it used to, before that it was that country, and he knows so much more than I do. And this was just because of the video games he played and the YouTube videos he watched on them, because he really likes to go on YouTube and watch lots of videos made by other people about the games that he likes, and they're all interesting, and I really like watching them together with him. So he found Crash Course. He found it. I didn't find it for him. He found it himself, and we're like, "Ooh, this is nice!" And we watched so many together. So that's it can also if you like follow them a little bit, they can go ways and take it a lot further than you would have been able to do if you had to decide for them what they had to do. Yeah,
exactly. And the really fascinating thing too is when they take it someplace and you're like, I never even thought of going in that direction, right?
Yeah.
And it's seeing how much interesting things they can bring into our lives too when they follow their path versus us trying to think 2 steps ahead and be directing them in places, right? Like, it's just so fascinating to see what they do with it, and being there with them is just, it helps us see, like, bottom line, it helps us see what they're learning. It helps us feel more comfortable with technology. And then when you get past that, it's just engaging as human beings with what we're curious about in the world. And then it's just us each bringing different things to each other. Oh, I came across Kerbal Space Program, and he came across this. And your lives are so much richer from what everybody brings to it, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's and that's the relationship enhancing thing about unschooling. If your lives are like that, then your relationship with each other improves as well, because you take each other seriously and you find an interest and you share it with someone else without the expectation that he needs to like it, but just showing them things. And sometimes they are like, oh, that's interesting, I don't want to watch it as well, and we watch it together. But it's there's some place I like to go, and they say, well, we'll go as well. I really like hiking, and I've taken them to lots of places, they kind of like it. They're teenagers. They're not like jumping up and down with enthusiasm, but they like that I've done it. Let me say it like that. They like that I've done it. So there's things you do for each other because you know that the other person is really interested in it, and that's just because of the relationship you have together and the trust. They really kind of trust me. So if I say something, I think you will like this, let's try it out, they're always happy to try it out, because they know that sometimes it's not a good guess and they don't like it, but I'm always really doing it with the intention to show them something, or bring them something, or take them somewhere with the intention that they will probably like it because I think they like it, and not with the intention that I think it's necessary for them to do that or something like that. But that's, most parents have that intention in their minds. Well, they really have to be exposed to this or that or blah, blah, blah. And that's not really my intention when I bring something to them. I'm just thinking, I think they might like that. And then I introduce it to them, and then there starts developing some kind of trust that they know that if I say you might like it, that it's worthwhile to have a look at it.
And you figured out, you've been good at that because, like you were saying, that relationship, that connection, because you're with them and you know the things that they're interested in. So you are making a good guess. Yeah. And you're sharing it without the expectation that they have to like it, right? Yeah. So that's the brilliant piece. Like you guys have developed this trust that you've developed a great understanding of them, that they've come to trust your intuition when you think they're going to like something, but they also know it's okay at the end of it, say, you know what? Yeah, that wasn't as fun as we kind of thought. We're not going to do that again. And that is totally okay too.
Yeah.
So that level of trust in each other in a relationship.
Yeah, because it goes the other way around as well, because I trust them as well. If they say, no, that's not good, I'm not going there again. Now I'm saying, oh, okay, we won't go. For example, my daughter, she doesn't always have the words to explain what she's feeling. So especially when she was younger, she was really not able to explain things. And she was like, no, I don't want to go there anymore. I want to quit this, or things like that. And I was always like, okay, I don't understand, and you're not able to explain me, but okay, we'll stop. Yeah. And that's so it goes the other way around as well. I trust them as well, and trust their opinions, and I trust that they know what they need and what's good for them.
Yeah, I love that. And part of that trust is that they don't need to be able to explain themselves. Right?
Yeah, and I like it when there are, because it's easier for me to help them.
Yeah. To help them process it further, right?
Excuse me?
So it's nice. It's nice if they can explain why, because then you can help them process through it, and you get a better understanding of them. But even if they can't explain it, they just have this feeling, it's definitely worth it to follow that, because it helps them learn more about themselves too. Right. I'm not sure why I don't like it yet, but I know I don't want to go. Not going helps them learn more. Okay. So next month they're thinking, I didn't go there. I didn't do that. How am I feeling? I'm more excited, and maybe later on down the road that they figure out why it was uncomfortable for them. But if you push them through that, they're never going to learn that piece. Right.
Yeah. And I also think that it's really important that they learn to trust themselves. So if I overrule them and say, well, you can't explain it to me, so you need to go, then that doesn't help their trust develop the trust in themselves.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned earlier that you were involved in the government discussions around homeschooling legislation. I just wondered if you could share a little bit about that experience and what unschooling looks like in the Netherlands.
Yeah, unschooling in the Netherlands, it is possible, because in the Netherlands, schooling doesn't exist. In our law, there's no word homeschooling in it. So what we do, you get an exemption from compulsory schooling, so you don't have to send them to school. And then what you do with your child is up to you. And so you can do distance learning, you can do homeschooling, whatever you like. So and there's no oversight. So there's no rules or requirements or anything. That is also the problem, because the Dutch government doesn't really like that, because they're scared that we're neglecting educational neglect or abuse, and the children don't go to school and nobody will see it. So the normal things that our government officials say in lots of countries, and we have that in our country as well. And at one time, it was in 2013, we had a government that said, well, let's just get rid of it all. We've been having, like the Homeschooling Association had been having discussions with the government about a type of oversight for homeschooling. But they were just like, there was a new person, he said, no, let's just get rid of it. And the problem at that time was that there was no majority of political parties that would help us. So it was really a big risk for succeeding. So that's when I said, well, I, from my study background, did a lot of policy analysis and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I'm able to help. I'm good at organizing. I'm good at talking. I'm good at policy analysis type of thing. So I'll come and help. So that's when I started working for the Dutch Homeschooling Association. Well, not working. It's just don't get paid for anything, but it was a lot of work. But we were quite successful up to now. That still they didn't get rid of it. We were able to talk to all the political parties and then explain to them what we were doing and why. And we kind of convinced them that it was a strange thing to do, but not something to get rid of. So that didn't work out for the government officials who thought that they would be able to do that. But then they did say, well, we do need some kind of oversight for it. So the next years we're discussing about what kind of oversight it would be. And it was always getting stricter and stricter and more rules. And it was every government we get a new person and he thinks of something worse to do to us. So that's where we are at the moment, still discussing. So that's been like 7 years, me talking to them. And the thing was that because I was coming from an unschooling perspective, I didn't tell those people that I was unschooling. I explained that we were homeschooling, and I explained what we were doing and what it looked like for me, but I didn't call it anything like unschooling. They don't like that word. Yeah. Most people don't like that word. So I just explained to them what we were doing. And well, people usually, when I explained to them the things we do with our children, they were like, oh, okay, that's kind of impressive, really. So that's good. So that helped. And it also helped the rest of the community be a little bit reassured that whenever there would be some kind of oversight, it would also be able to work with unschooling. Because when you're more like a school at home family and your homeschooling looks more like with textbooks and with a curriculum and with it and that, and following the government planning for the timeline for when you have to learn what, then it's easier to go through any type of oversight. But if you're unschooling, then it's a little bit more harder. So that's something that I always try to make sure that it would be possible for unschoolers to homeschool as well. But for me, it was difficult because I had to talk to these people. It was not nice to talk to them. Most of the time, they were like, especially people at the Ministry of Education, they looked at me like we were like cockroaches or something, doing something really bad with our children. And I used to come home from talking to them and I was like, ugh. And I had like 2 days. I needed a day or two to recover from it. So because they have such a different view of what you should do to your children, they were like, but you need to test them. It's not possible without testing. And they were like doing things and talking about things that were like such a different world from what I was used to and what I thought education was about and the things that I thought were important. And they thought that I was like crazy. And that was, didn't really like that. But yeah, did it anyway because I really wanted to save homeschooling. And we did up until now. So that was a good thing. Yeah.
Wow.
So I didn't only do the conversation with the government. I also, because the Dutch Homeschooling Association, it had existed before, but it wasn't really an active association. So it didn't really do a lot of things. And I thought, well, it's important for people to, when they choose to homeschool, that they know about the different forms of homeschooling and that they educate themselves. And it's a bit hard to do in the Netherlands because there's not a lot of Dutch information. So if you don't speak English, it's difficult to understand what types of homeschooling there are and what would be a best fit for your family. So we started workshops and things like that for people to explain. So I was always the one explaining unschooling, and there were other people explaining about Charlotte Mason, about the well-trained mind and things like that. And that's what we did to try and help other homeschoolers homeschool well. And these are all things that are still happening, but other people have taken over now. So I'm really glad to see that didn't just fade away when I stopped doing it. Yeah, and then at the moment I'm trying to support the homeschool community in another way. I'm working on a math curriculum because I think a lot of because I really like math, so it's a subject I like to work on, and it's also something that if you use a normal curriculum, it's not really necessary to learn math like that in the home. And with my perspective from unschooling, it's more like creating an environment where it's impossible not to learn math, and that's do fun activities, play games, and do things like that, and help children learn math in that way. So it's kind of a strange thing for an unschooler to do, to write a curriculum. But yeah, for me it fits. But and I'm organizing lots of things for other homeschoolers, just not just unschoolers, but everyone who wants to join in. So there's not a lot of unschoolers in the Netherlands at all. there's just a couple of families, because a lot of people want to unschool when their children are 4 or 5 years old. But then when they reach the age when other children in our country start learning to read and write and math, then they're like, oh, can't not do that. Then unschooling is out of the window.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That is so fascinating. And, thank you for your effort in working with the government. I can imagine because that isn't, you're talking with people, when you're talking with people in the government, they're not even interested in homeschooling. Like they already have a super negative view. So it's not like you're talking to people who are curious. They are not curious. They just want to shut it down, right?
Yeah, and they know that they think they know better than I do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So thanks for taking that on. Oh my gosh. And I think like you were saying that now that you've stepped back from that, you're seeing other people stepping up. And I'm sure that's because you were just a shining example of what can be done, right? That you can approach the different parties and talk to them and explain, even when it's painful, even when you need a couple of days recovery after, that you chose to do this because it was that important to you, right? So I think that was just a beautiful example for them that they can rally around. So that's wonderful. And I wanted to touch on your math curriculum. Because like, that's brilliant. I mean, it almost sounds like curriculum is just the only word that you can use, but really, like you said, it's about creating that environment. And I think what that will be so helpful with is what we talked about earlier. So many parents with math phobia, right?
Yeah.
So definitely. Like you're really just working them through that and showing them how you can create a fun environment where math is just there, right? It just bubbles up because math is a language of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah, and seeing patterns and shapes and things like that. And it's really fun that you're mentioning it, because I have 2 families that are testing the material I write for me to see if it works and if the children like it and if the parents are able to do it with their children. And they both are a bit like math. So they're really good testers for me, because if they can do it, then that's a really good sign. So I've talked to them a lot about math phobia and things like that, and to other people in the homeschooling community as well. Especially for women, a lot of women, they don't, my age at least, that they don't think they're good at math, because when we went to school, there was more of a focus that boys are good at math and not girls. So when I went to university, I went to a University of Technology in the Netherlands. There were like 25% women and 75% men. So that's also been a difference for math phobia. That it's more for women than for fathers. And in homeschooling families, the thing is that most of the time the fathers work and the mothers have to teach their children or do anything and do the unschooling. But they're the ones doing it. And then they're the ones with the most math phobia. So they, I thought they could use some help. And then when they are doing it with their children, at the same time, they learn as well. And now they are able to see, well, I'm not really that bad in it. I can do it as well. So at least that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Yeah.
It seems it's for the family. It's not a math curriculum for the kids to follow. It is for the family to play with. So that's awesome.
And I'm having so much fun with it. It's a bit daunting as well, because then what I did was I thought it was the most important that the people who are the children that are at the age that they might go to high school, that there's a program for them to do that gets them up to speed so they can go to high school if they want to. So I've made something that is for like the 11 to 14-year-olds, and it does like all of the math that you learn in elementary school in 1 year. So that's a bit of an ambitious project to take on, but it's also that there are so many different subjects to do. And I was like, sometimes when I'm working on it, I'm thinking, oh, it's too much. I'm not sure if I can make it. And oh, yeah, yeah. And it's also when you put it out there, because I finished the first half of the year, so I put it on my website, and it's selling at the moment. And I'm also like, oh, I hope they like it, and I don't know yet. And it's a bit nerve-wracking, but it's a good thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds like it ticks so many of your buttons, right? You know, your love of math, your love of systems, your love of trying to pull this, like just how creative that act is of trying to pull that all together and do it in fun and interesting ways without that, you know, that pressure of you know, a school kind of curriculum, and without that, you know, step, but still getting them through those pieces. If that, because they're choosing that to move through that, if they're thinking that, you know, high school is a possibility, something that they're interested in pursuing. So yeah, I can see how that can be so much fun and stressful, because you want to know, you know, is it actually helping, like working out for them? So that's really fun.
Yeah, because I know it works for us, because there's a lot of activities in it that I've also done with the math clubs I've been organizing for the last couple of years. So a lot of the activities, I know they worked for us, but then I also know that a big factor in that is that I know how math works, and I really like math. So the enthusiasm, we were talking about it before, that plays a big part in it, for the other children to, when they do it with me, that they get it. So, but are other parents able to do it as well? So that was the test with the testing families, and they're able to do it. But now the test is, other people, are they able to do it? So maybe I'm just a bit too insecure about it, because, well, I've tested it myself and I've let other people test it. So I should be able to say that it works, but it's an exciting thing to do at the moment. I'm planning to do the last part, finish it in around Christmas, New Year, and then up to new projects. But this one should be finished by then. Yeah.
So fun. So I would love to know, what is your favorite thing about the flow of your unschooling days right now?
Right now. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work. So that's a difficult question, because it's so much work at the moment. Yeah. So it's so different from when they were younger. But I think the thing that I really like is that I think I mentioned it before, that the learning is really interesting to me as well at the moment. So that's, for example, the book list we're reading with my daughter. It's so interesting. The books are really, really good, and we're having so much fun with it. And it's a subject that I really like, and we're watching videos and documentaries, and I'm like, oh, so that's how this all fits together. And it's really interesting. We watched a documentary on ancient Greece, and you usually learn about different parts, and this documentary did a great job of fitting all these pieces together, and I was like, oh, this is wonderful. So that's something I really like. And I think the other thing that I really like is that my children, I read to them every day still. So the reading aloud, that's really nice too. Yeah, so we're reading books every morning and evening before we go to sleep. We read books. So I think that's a really nice thing as well. Yeah.
I'd be curious. So you mentioned the book list with your daughter, and you mentioned them earlier as well with your son. So in the book list, are you guys mostly reading those separate, or are those the books that you're reading together in the morning and the evening?
No, I read together with my son and daughter at the same time. So,
so it's something different.
The book list we read together on a different part of the day. She doesn't like to read them by herself. We read them together. So, and there are lots of books she reads by herself, but not these ones. Yeah. She reads Percy Jackson books by herself. Yeah. Lots of Percy Jackson books by Rick Riordan.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's very fun. And I'm sure people are going to ask, so maybe you can shoot me the link or information about that documentary too.
The documentary, that was a good one. Yeah, I liked it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today, Eva. I had so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. It was really interesting and really nice to talk to somebody about unschooling. It's a great subject. I really like talking about it. So thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, me too. Unschooling is not something that, comes up in conversation face to face very often, right? So it is so much fun to connect with people who love it. as well as I do. So before we go, where can people connect with you online?
It's only in Dutch. So I have a blog. It's called berefien.blogspot.com. So that's the blog that I have for what we are doing.
Yeah.
So just the home things. And I have a website that I sell my things on, and I write, but I just started that. It's called zeestrandacademie.nl. So that's a website that I have started, and I'm having a blog on that as well. And I'm writing more like homeschooling related blogs on that. So more about homeschooling and not about what we're actually doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that's great. I will share those because, some people from the Netherlands may end up coming across our conversation at some point. So the links in the show notes will help point them in that direction as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much for chatting with me today, and have a wonderful evening because you're already well into your day.
Thank you. You too. Have a nice day.
Thanks.